Hey, y'all. Long time no see, but we're back. This is Bouncing Around. Myself, Samson Folk, over there, Evan Gualberto. This is his YouTube channel, which is built with blood, sweat, and tears through all these years. Blood alone moves the wheels of history, as he has always said. We're here to talk about the NBA since the season has started. As far as the Bouncing Around Samson and Evan agenda, things have been extremely strong so far. Today, Minnesota, Houston, Milwaukee, plus
San Antonio.
San Antone. And we're going to get it on. So get ready to bounce around. Okay, Evan, here's the thing. We get together to talk about basketball last year every week, basically. And then we had some brain drain. We ran out of juice. We both do other work. And then we realized, it takes about, on average, each of us like 7 hours to edit our half of Bouncing Around. These things come in at about 60 gigabytes an episode. It's a huge undertaking. But we've decided to undertake it once again. And is there any random musings that you have as far as the NBA so far in the season?
I feel like there are a few things kicking around, but they'll come to the fore when we get to talking about stuff. It's there, but it's not there. So, if you do, I feel like that'll jumpstart things. Do you?
Paul George, hey. I'm going to get to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns because that's my game of the week. And you and I both itch to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns almost perpetually. Just like, it's something we enjoy. It's something we revel in. I also famously am on Paul George's payroll. He pays me to, in simple terms, post positively about him. And that's why Minute Basketball was actually in my most lucrative venture yet, because I wrote about Paul George in that. And I would just like to dedicate a little bit of time to the fringe MVP candidate season that Paul George is inevitably going to have, because he's still that dude. He's still fantastic. And as I'm talking about this, the highlights will be running, but seeing him take the screen and roll, get downhill and take that bump and finish over top, mixed with that illustrious, gorgeous water running down the hill pull-up that he has. He plays some of the most beautiful basketball in the NBA, and I have so enjoyed watching him again. With the Grizzlies, do you have any Paul George thoughts at this point in time? Do you want to get on the payroll with me?
Yeah, no doubt. I am on record by way of videos as saying, like, I'm a Paul George believer. I have wanted to make a video every single year. And there's guys who, after I finish a video for them, it's just like, okay, you had a great season. I'm kind of done with, because it kind of looks the same. And if you're wondering the video process of who I decide to make a video for, it's who pops, who's going to pop in a big way. And I feel like I'm jumping the front of the line by making a video. Like, that's the kind of stuff you can sort of expect. Those are the types of players. And I've wanted to make a Paul George video. I have X amount of video files, clips, games in the hard drive that I, am still working through. So Paul George, yeah. And, covered by a good friend of mine, Sabreena Merchant, who happens to do really good work on the Clippers. So win.
Elsewhere, some sort of WNBA podcast that I hear is maybe one of the more popular WNBA podcasts.
If people are saying that, they're not saying that to me. I would like them to. I do it for the attention. That's what I need.
If people are saying that, they're not saying it to me is just a hell of a line, by the way. Very good. Okay, so I feel like we just skip to my game of the week because I'm extremely excited to talk about this team there are several agendas going on here. The Karl-Anthony Towns agenda lives strong within me, as does the real Hoopers only agenda. Now, I am not ball don't stop. I don't take it to that degree. I don't want to engage in that type of dialogue. Although I do really appreciate, and this is something that can be seen very much in my writing, my work over at Minute Basketball, the aesthetic of basketball. The Rockets with Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood, and now Jalen Green, and you know, like this rough and tumble Jayshawn Tate stuff, they possess a lot of the outstanding aesthetics in the league. And they all operate on different planes of existence. Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, Josh Okogie, and Jaden McDaniels, one of the funkiest and perhaps most effective starting fives in the Western Conference this year. They are an absolute thrill. And to see both those teams go at it, the very, very polished, exciting, now Karl-Anthony Towns, to finally step into the fray, sans Jimmy Butler, sans all that other stuff, sans Robert Covington. These Wolves are his undoubtedly, and he's about to take them, I think, to a playoff spot. That is my takeaway from these Wolves. And granted, I am always a little overeager to crown the Wolves. And as was their social media team when they, famously tweeted that when they were 4-0 and they're like, and then they lost however many games in a row, like they lost like 20 out of 24 or something like that. Not good. But I'm here to tell you, it seems real now because they are a vaunted offensive team. But on top of that, they've had two sterling defensive performances. And the biggest reason for that is finally something that you and I have been asking for. A, Karl-Anthony Towns, a little bit more active, a little bit more mobile. But B, he is insulated. Ooh, when a big man gets insulated, gorgeous things happen. And with McDaniels and Okogie, those guys are absolute freaks. James Boo, who is a big fan, said he wanted me to push the all-NBA defense agenda for Josh Okogie. He doesn't have to ask. Okogie was guarding Kevin Porter Jr., was guarding Jalen Green. Did just a fantastic job standing up both of those guys. And the big, beautiful brand of defense that the Wolves were playing in this game was that Okogie and McDaniels were helping from everywhere. It was reckless abandon to rack up steals and blocks, which they did in the following game against the Pelicans as well, by the way. So we've got a 2-game streak going where they're able to get blocks and get steals and then run out with that wonderful blend of talent that they have. Fundamentally, when I look at this team, I see something that works, something that's can be maintained, and something that is extremely exciting. The Wolves couldn't have been put in a better position by Chris Finch and by the talent on the roster and how they went to work in the offseason. Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Edwards working on his shot making, Karl-Anthony Towns working on his fitness, his body, getting into excellent shape, and just looks like he's ready to tear the league apart. Do you have any thoughts on anything I've said so far?
Well, we did a preview pod many moons ago about the Wolves before the coaching change, before all of that. And we talked about the many different looks this team could give you. And we didn't even, the crazy thing is, famously, I refuse to talk about rookies. Ant was somebody I did not want to talk about because I didn't, I don't know what he's going to bring. We talked about Karl-Anthony Towns being more of a ball handler, playmaker, playing an invert action, being the trigger man and all of this stuff. And I mean, we were a little bit ahead when we talked about what he could do defensively. I think history will agree with us on that one. He's showing some stuff. Like I didn't watch the game. I just saw some highlights, the odd set you sent me, but this team there's a lot of potential there. And, in the West, the hyper loaded, always packed and busy West, it's hard to say that a team is going to make the playoffs as opposed to like the play in. But I mean, if they can continue to look as good as they have in the first two games, then I mean, yeah, why not? What's stopping them?
This was my biggest thing, obviously, was that, is this a caveat? Is this the Rockets? Am I looking at Okogie and McDaniels as so effective? And even Beasley had a pretty good defensive game, by the way, which that's never been his bag. He's a hell of a shooter. He's a great mover offensively. He's never been a bonus defender, a plus defender. Bonus defender? Who uses that term? Only me just now. But when we talk about their defense, I wondered, is this just a very, very overzealous defense that is dominating two players in Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, who, while they can create and can get downhill and can generate rotation, that's, Kevin Porter Jr. is a water dancer with the ball. It is wonderful to watch him dribble and watch him move. He can get to so many places on the court. And Jalen Green is a very rare athletic specimen. He had one play, he came off a pin down and had this throw ahead dribble. Like, imagine Isiah Thomas with the Pistons, how he used to split double teams, right? Or not double teams, how he used to split in the pick and roll, that big throw ahead dribble and burst into space. Jalen Green came off a pin down, got his hips pointed the right way, huge throw ahead dribble, went and collected in the lane and had a beautiful up and under. Like, he's great in open space. He's dominant. But the thing is, the Wolves played so well in that McDaniels and Okogie both did a great job containing a lot of it, but that I wondered if the Rockets, it was just a couple guys who weren't so well adept at adjusting to rotations and didn't know the passes to make. And maybe the Wolves were just, hey, this is a team that doesn't know how to find the guy on the weak side and is only looking for dump offs. Suddenly Towns, Okogie, and McDaniels are all menaces in the paint, fiending over there. You get a lot of steals, you get a lot of blocks. I thought maybe it was that. However, they had another sterling defensive game against the Pelicans, who play a much different style to the Rockets. And so this is something I'm really looking forward to seeing, is across different schemes offensively, can this scheme defensively continue to win? And when you hold the team to 89 points like the Pelicans, after shellacking the Rockets as well, not everything is about, point differential. Not everything is about how big you win by. But when you come out and you set the tone like that defensively to start the season, you wonder, is it valid? Is this something that would be continued? It's something I'm very intrigued to watch. But most importantly, Karl-Anthony Towns is being put in very strong defensive positions. I think you can look sort of to Nikola Vucevic within the Magic, being surrounded by Gordon, being surrounded by Isaac, and Vucevic is a very big man. While he doesn't have the quickest foot speed, while he's not the most contained defender, you put him in the middle while the defense rolls around him, it's going to be quite good. And that's what the Wolves have done here. They've emboldened Karl to be a very aggressive shot blocker and shot contester. And they know he's going to get after it and board the ball afterwards. So I thought that was fantastic. As far as the Rockets attacking it, I think the Rockets are a super fun offensive team. The game after, they completely blew up, I think, for like 125 or 126 points, which did make me think, wow, the Wolves stopped this, because I'm always eager to crown the Wolves, of course. But the thing is, the Wolves did a great job countering a ton of actions. It's not easy to take Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and Christian Wood, who are all fantastic offensive talents, and mute them. But that's something that we did see happen. As far as Houston, though, I think it is interesting just to take Jalen Green, who made, I think, a few really great reads while going downhill. Those ended up just being towards the bucket. He had a strong side pass to the corner, which was nice, where he created a three. And he did relocate quite well, actually, as an off-ball guy. So that was encouraging to see. But the early returns of Jalen Green seemed like it was the promise of what he was supposed to be out of the draft. An explosive scorer, a guy who, in the open dimensions of the NBA court, is going to be able to take two steps in a lot of directions and get airborne. And while that didn't turn into like a bunch of free throws or anything like that, he did get to the rim quite often. He got 2 feet in the paint, and hell yeah for Jalen Green. And Kevin Porter Jr., I feel bad for him. Josh Okogie was a menace. He locked him up. He was going 3/4 court press from time to time. He was tracking him when he was off ball. And when Kevin Porter Jr. tried to dance on him on ball, it just wasn't happening. Do you know how tough it is to contain Kevin Porter Jr.? It's like trying to hold water in your hand. He's going to slip by. And yet Josh Okogie had, I don't know, gloves that hold water. He had a cup, let's say. He caught Kevin Porter Jr. in the cup. That's all I have to say about those things. And Christian Wood continues to deliver on the massive promise of his offensive tool set. He is so much fun. I understand why Warriors fans are pining for Christian Wood to somehow get there. I still can't believe he only makes $14 million a year. It's ludicrous. It's borderline illegal. But as far as a guy who rolls with good pacing, presents himself for a long time to ball handlers in the pick and roll, can pop, and also can pump and drive, he's an overwhelming offensive presence, and he'll continue to get better defensively, I think. So those three things were something that was awesome to watch. Watching Eric Gordon take these like heady, backup guard possessions and kind of work his way into the lane, snake pick and rolls and do stuff like that. That was awesome as a huge Eric Gordon fan. But that's how I feel about the Wolves defense mostly and the Rockets offense. It was a wholly dominant performance by the Wolves, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. Now, oh boy, the Wolves offense. This is what everybody should be coming for repeatedly. And they've unlocked something this year in the first two games that I've seen, and particularly in this one, that makes them incredibly dangerous. Everybody saw the clip of Anthony Edwards telling Silas, call the timeout. You need a timeout. It's like braggadocious. It's funny. It's cool. There was like 20 seconds left in the, in the quarter. Like he didn't need to call a timeout. It's fine. Actually, I believe it was at half. But anyway, it was cool to see. And not to mention that like the defense led to offense. That was there too. It did make me think like, is there a bit of Toronto in this Minnesota defense? I wonder, just because it was so scramble heavy and it was so eager to create turnovers and get out and run, especially since they are putting Okogie and McDaniels in that starting five. Is that how they want to get those guys looks? Remains to be seen. That's the kind of stuff that will, develop over the rest of the year, and we'll see more reps and we'll see stuff like that. Most importantly, though, Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards run two-man actions. Sweet Lord. If Ant is going to hunt space and the ball this aggressively, and Karl-Anthony Towns is going to have that very same ethic running his game, those guys are going to be hell to defend every single moment of every single game. I love when two-man actions go dribble handoff, reset, pick and roll, reset, like dribble handoff. They're just like, guard the screen, guard the screen, guard the screen. If an edge comes, you're dead, because it's Karl-Anthony Towns, it's Anthony Edwards, and the edges come. And not to mention, like, everybody knows that Chris Finch loves horn sets, and they have Anthony Edwards who's making good decisions out of horns, like a little horns out. You can see it on screen. Two different decisions here. The one is finding the guy on the roll after, the initial set runs, and then they bring a guy over for a screen. And then the other one is just pulling up right away for a triple. If he's going to make good decisions, Anthony Edwards, with that shot making package, which he's worked on extensively throughout the summer, and the 99th percentile athletic measurements and explosion measurements that he tested with at, I think, was it P3 prior to the draft. If all that stuff is coming together into one package, that's smiling every time he's down the court, that is like, hell yeah, I'm going to dominate the league, and he gets to play off of Cat, that's fantastic to see. There's a baseline out of bounds play where they just went into screening action right beside each other. Anthony Edwards made a cut towards the bucket, not a hard cut, just a cut. And Karl-Anthony Towns popped out. And maybe the greatest shooting big man of all time was left wide open. That's the kind of thing that, yes, Rockets, young team, who knows? But if they're going to generate that much attention in those two-man actions, they're going to create so many things for each other to work off of. And that was something that was on display in this game. These two players working together. And most importantly, my guy, lefties, a member of the Leftorium, vaunted by M. Gilberto. D'Angelo Russell was driving the ball? Did you hear that right? And not only that, D'Angelo Russell got to the free throw line. Like that, the amount of space in this offense is so abundant that D'Angelo Russell, who Cat went out of his way to omit from his everybody here is athletic comment. And he said, well, maybe not D'Lo. Like D'Lo is so unathletic relative to his peers in the NBA that he doesn't see that stuff as slights. He's just like, yeah, that's how it is. This guy was getting to the line. This guy was putting fellow guards who guard him in compromised positions. A little bit of guile, but just oceans of room to work in. And not to mention, this is like my favorite thing about D'Angelo Russell, outside of his like top 10 passer in the NBA, brilliant interpretations of the floor, and so many like arm angles and dribble heights that he passes out of, but 4 triples in a row and with increasing distance on each one. And just to see that, like Karl-Anthony Towns looked at him on the one and was like, get after him, put Daniel Tice on skates and go to work. And he did. And then in pseudo transition, he just kept being like, I guess I'll keep pulling. And that is the huge appeal of this team, is that Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, particularly Edwards, getting to the level where he's at now, and hopefully that he maintains. He's not going to make 7 threes every game. That seems quite obvious. But the danger he provides to those 2-man actions, that's awesome. Love to see it, because Karl-Anthony Towns makes everything so dangerous already. You add a potent guy to that. And then the thing that I love is D'Lo and Anthony Edwards can just oscillate between first and second side action. And both of them are going to be really good this year. And the fact that those guys are going to be that potent offensively, and I think they will be. I think we're going to look at D'Angelo Russell's best year since that year in Brooklyn, and I think it'll be better than that. And obviously Anthony Edwards is trending upwards, but Karl is the real guy. Karl-Anthony Towns gets a post up and eats guys alive. He's on the offensive glass. He's grabbing defensive boards, running the length of the court, and jamming from like damn near a step inside the free throw line. He is a man possessed. He has skills that other bigs could only ever dream about, and he's ready to apply them all on court and carry this team going forward. This game for me was just a wonderful expression of those 3 guys, their games offensively. And then on top of that, particularly Okogie and McDaniels defensively, so many guys got to show so much. And I just can't wait to watch more of the Wolves this year, because this was a huge flex. And Chris Finch, in the first 2 games, I think has done a masterful job of pressing the right buttons to get this team to where they need to be. The Wolves, man, playoff team. Let's go. And the number 1 league pass team of the season. I'm putting it out there. Stamped.
What is there more to say? Oh, wow. I mean, Ant, fearless, obviously. The shot selection it's exactly what we talked about. And, you know, it's a shame it's taken this long to shout out the great PD Webb, you know, but we talk about giving wings, especially wings like Ant, high usage, just letting them make mistakes. And like I talked about, I think every time we talked about Ant last year is he doesn't care. He doesn't care what mistakes he makes. So you watch him, I think 12 threes he attempted. I don't necessarily know. Maybe you could argue that some of them were like so shots, but who cares? Who cares? There was one cook. Exactly. Because like between D'Lo and Beasley and Ant, one of those like wings / guards is gonna get hot in a game. You know, on a great day, maybe all 3, but at least one of them is going to go off. It's going to be highly unlikely that you can stop Cat and all 3. So there was one, I think, where Ant drove the ball in, took a hard dribble at the elbow, and then kicked it out. And then he backpedaled as the player he threw it to drove in. So he was behind the 3-point line. And then he got the ball kicked back to him. And then, you know, negative momentum and all, he just caught, rose up. And it's just like, yo, these are the shots he's going to hit. come on, it's not right. As you said, the horns out sets, the just super simple ant and cat setup at the elbows, and then they screen for each other. One of them goes out, and then they empty that side of the floor so you can run a side ball screen or like a flare action. And there's so many different things that each of them can do that there is no answer to guys like that, because now you're playing this improv game of, as you said, throw, catch, chase, give and go. You're gonna make a mistake because these guys can both shoot. They're both willing to shoot. They're both willing to drive. And there's an unpredictability in that no matter what you do, they're going to find a crease, a crack, an opening, and they're going to exploit it. And that's the scary thing about great players, is like you can do everything 100% right, and they're still going to leverage something. Just scary, scary stuff.
There's one play that I hope is kind of a bellwether for how the Wolves want to play this year. And Okogie stonewalls a drive. The player loses the ball. Cat picks it up. McDaniels starts leaking out, and Cat hits McDaniels. McDaniels spreads to the wing, and Ant trails. And he goes behind the back pass to Ant, who just cans a triple. And you're like, oh, man, this team is fun. This is a team that's willing to play fast. They're willing to play loose. And, there was murmurs that the Raptors drafted Scotty Barnes to help instill kind of like a culture. And like, especially since Scotty Barnes is such a charismatic and likable dude, why not with Anthony Edwards? Why wouldn't he help change and break through the kind of mold that's grown on the Wolves through these years, right? And for Cat, a guy who's been kind of God, what a, tough lately, to have a guy like Anthony Edwards around who's so positive and so like the vibes excellent, and emboldens everybody to be their best selves, and will do it with himself too. So cool to see a personality like that thriving also with his skill set. It's fantastic. And not to mention, there's going to be a whole bunch of really interesting free throw line stuff for Ant this year. Like there's a couple plays where you see the body control he has and the explosion he has. He's turning dead drives that for so many guards, so many players league wide are just dead. And it has to be a really tough shot. That his ability to just completely change angles and change his body at the last second means, okay, it's free throws. I'll put a couple clips up. It's fantastic. It's a significant skill that he's probably going to grow at a very quick rate by the looks of it. But that's how I feel about the Wolves. That's how I feel about Wolves and Rockets. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. So all these young pieces, like I'm excited to see what Stephen Silas can actually do. I think he got, kind of a raw deal last year, especially starting the season with the way it started with all of that drama, which again feels like many, many moons ago. But, love to see. I don't want to say young coach because, he is not necessarily, he's been around a while as an assistant, but last year was his first year getting to be a head coach. And, a lot of times we see these situations play out where these first time coaches are given a raw deal and then they're never able to bounce back in the league. So, hopefully Stephen can make the most of his situation. And I think with all the young guys for the Rockets, it's going to be exciting. Going to be exciting to watch both teams because I think they're in similar situations where, well, obviously not like the Rockets are in a much different place, but they both have so much young talent that you just want to see what they'll mold and shape and grow into.
Certainly. Are you ready to detail Milwaukee versus San Antonio? The now DeRozan-less Spurs against the newly, what would the term be? Newly braggadocious Bucks, playing with a championship chip on that shoulder. I'd love to hear what you think about this game.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the hottest take I have is that Milwaukee is very good at basketball. And the end. No. So identity, right? We previewed the Spurs in that sort of one-off episode, and it was kind of fun seeing the Spurs against the Bucks, especially because you have that whole Bud Pop thing going on. And the more Bud and Pop grow their hair and beards out, the more similar they look, which is, I never really stopped to think about it, but there was a side by side between the two of them. And it was just, oh, okay, this is what it's becoming. So we can start with the obvious, right? Is that Giannis is super scary good, only played 30 minutes. No real need to play more. Brooke Lopez out for the beginning of the season, right? Dante DiVincenzo also out. And so now, as I continue to say, it's actually funny. If you go to the box score, Giannis and Chris Middleton are listed as forwards. Grayson Allen and Drew Holiday are the guards. And obviously a mistake, but Pat Connaughton is listed at center for the Bucks. So shout out to Bud for making these bold decisions.
Naturally, this means that Pat Connaughton is now, his ideal comp is DeAndre Ayton, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, if we start with the Bucks, experimentation has been the way to go with Coach Budenholzer, right? Who we didn't do a bouncing around for the finals or anything like that. But if you caught me messing around on Twitter, I did say like, hey, congrats to Coach Bud, now part of 5 NBA championships, because we did the episode way back when we talked about Steve Kerr and Bud and how you should give them, I'm not going to curse. You should give them a break because
noted bad coach, Mike Budenholzer.
I know. So there's something to be said about being able to have continuity, and the way they were able to start off the season, especially, and then this game, it was really fun because like, obviously the Bucks aren't whole yet, but I expect a lot of messing around with the Bucks, just like trying different things, because now you know what you have. You're a known quantity, right? You have these 3 stars that can deliver, and obviously you have Giannis. That first game where he was hitting all those pull-ups, can't really argue with the swagger he has there. Or this game, he had a Dirk fade free throw line ish area. That was nice to see. When in a bind, they still run those empty pick and rolls, which why wouldn't you if you have a Giannis? Drew Holiday continues to be just a godsend. So I guess the first place to start is the fact that both of these teams largely played in drop coverage, which makes sense when you have a Jakob Poeltl and, a Giannis. Why wouldn't you? So the Milwaukee Bucks, and I mean, he doesn't need a shout out, because if you want to know anything about the NBA at this point, you know who Gibson Pyper is, Halfcourt Hoops. His coach's cut, his newsletter, that it came out moments after the opening night game ended, which his turnaround time is getting faster and scarier. He talked about how the Bucks ghost their action against switches. So a lot of that in this game as well. A couple of early possessions to just get it going. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, for the most part, were the guys that they used to exploit this action. Very first play, which is Bryn Forbes is defending George Hill, and then Keldon Johnson is defending Chris, and then they ghost it. So Chris gets a right side ISO where they have to send a double down. It doesn't result in anything, but it's consistently, I feel, how they're going to be attacking switching defenses. And why not? Because that's there. And you have the type of dynamic guards in Middleton and Drew that can just exploit even the slightest of mismatches by getting in the post. They're middies. They can pull back from behind the 3-point line. And Chris can launch from anywhere and does. So yeah, and they won this game, so that's cool. A lot of guys who I don't necessarily know if they will continue to play as big roles in the regular season once Dante and Brooke come back. But Jordan Nwora had this highlight chase down that was spectacular. Thanasis, who energy, every now and then he'll have a highlight or two that it just pops, but for the most part he's still a work in progress. Just some fun guys. And the Bucks I don't think the Bucks are really going to care very much about their record this year, as long as you can position yourself to avoid having to face Miami and Brooklyn in back-to-back rounds. Then, I don't think they're really going to care. Yeah, that's as much time as I want to dedicate to the Bucks, really, is, yeah, the Bucks are a known quantity. The Bucks are the Bucks.
Agreed. What you bring up about Drew Holiday, about Chris Middleton, pulling up, hitting shots. I like both those players a lot. I know we both really like both those players a lot. So I'm very happy that they're receiving love on Bouncing Around. So hell yeah, let's hear about those Spurs.
So excited about the Spurs because, oh my God, did they have, we talked about this in that preview episode. They have so many young guys. Like this roster could be anything, I think. What it isn't is a team that plays with Thaddeus Young.
Yes.
So,
no Thagic.
Yeah.
This is, by the way, this is the second podcast I've done today that has white knuckled through Thad not playing news. By the way, you and Blake Murphy have the exact same reservations about it.
We have types. Makes sense. Also, oh man, a glaring omission from the leftorium. I'm just now realizing that's on me. Let me see if I can. I'll see if I can address that. Okay. So the Spurs. We talked about this in the preview. They have one Doug McDermott. Doug was doing stuff this game. The Spurs on the whole, as a team, hit 10 3-pointers. Doug accounted for 7 of those. So he's doing stuff. I'll talk about that in a bit. If you need some Doug McDermott reading, go back, read some Caitlin Cooper. So yeah. Okay. Where to start here? I'll talk about Dejounte Murray and Derrick White in a little bit, but Doug McDermott, in terms of their early offense, they run Miami action for Doug to come out of the corner. He throws it to Jakob, and then they, like I was talking about with Ant and Cat, this give and go game that just bends the defenses in a way, and Doug hits tough shots. This next one is, I think this is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on as the season progresses, is the Spurs seem to have this automatic where they have all these dynamic young guards who can drive, right? But when they don't have a straight line, they sprint to a handoff for the most part. So here, Keldon Johnson gets this early away screen, and then he sprints right into, he can't go at Chris Middleton and turn the corner. So he sprints into this DHO with Doug, which looks improv, but I mean, such is the nature of having a Doug McDermott type. So, here right away, it looks like they're going pistol. They don't quite get anything. So the ball is reversed and it goes into this Chicago action with Yak and Doug again. The elusiveness of Doug McDermott, the nonstop give and goes, zooms as they're sometimes called. And then
that's, by the way, that's like insatiable. The amount of work he's putting in on that is absolutely nuts. Big shout out to him. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. And I think that's why when I said what I said in the preview episode is that, like, I don't exactly know what this team is going to look like, but I know when Doug is on the floor, you have a known quantity and there's something you're going to be able to go to. And it's his ridiculous work rate. And you set those wide actions, those early aways, and you're going to leverage something good. He didn't have many assists, if that's how you're looking at playmaking, distribution, things like that. He didn't have many assists, but they were able to leverage his gravity, and he was able to draw guys in, and then it was a swing, next play, hockey assist type thing.
You know the game Tron?
Yeah.
You know how you can't stop. You just always have to be in motion. You just have to be directing it to different areas. That's what I see when I watch Doug McDermott move offensively. It's just like it doesn't stop. It's Tron.
Yeah. That's really good.
Hey. Yeah, sometimes I come up with
Next shirt. That's new merch. So okay, here's as good an example as any. This Chicago chase action. So I think Doug slips here, but he gets this down screen from Derrick White, DHO from Eubanks, and then he takes a dribble, gives it up, cuts through, and then it turns into a ball screen for Lonnie Walker, who, Lonnie Walker trying to get paid. He's going to have some moments this year, and they're going to look really, really impressive. And this is an example where Doug gets no credit for this. But this play is largely made by him, because if you look right here, he ends up in the strong side corner. Pat Connaughton isn't helping, even though if it were anybody else, you could help off of that, but can't help off of Doug. And that's the exciting thing about Doug. Another Lonnie Walker highlight moment here where, well, not necessarily a highlight, but he ghosts a screen and then Derrick White gets this early ball screen and then he just kind of flashes and hits a 3 over Chris Middleton. If Lonnie Walker is going to hit these types of shots, it's going to be, and he was 1 for 8. So, I don't think he's going to hit as many of these shots as you would like. But Dejounte Murray, I think, is largely going to do his damage in the mid-range, maybe get some paint touches and then create from there. Derrick White, who knows? Our Lord and Savior Derrick White. Call back to the preview app.
I don't have the picture with me, so I'll just have to edit it in. Me holding,
Yeah. And so it's just, no, I'm not done. I'm not done with the sets. I'll keep powering through. Because I haven't had a chance to talk about Hawk. Hawk action, as you can see here, and this is what's nifty. I'm going to show you what I think the Spurs call it. So if you ever hear it in the broadcast, you'll know what it is. So Tre Jones gets this. I don't want to call it a horns out because, they're not really in horns and the other 2 guys are in a strange spot. So let's just call this an out set where Eubanks sets this screen for Tre to come out and then Bryn Forbes gets this back screen from Eubanks. And one of the ways it's Hawk, if nothing else, is this kind of awkward stagger on the weak side and then it flows into a ball screen and then you have Bryn coming off this double stagger on the weak side. So that's Hawk. And then eventually it flows into just a Lonnie Walker rejecting a screen and then attacking and then getting to the free throw line. But Bryn Forbes, he's not necessarily a guy that is going to make a lot of stuff happen off the dribble. He's more of a movement shooter. When he catches, he's a threat. Famously, he had those sets in Milwaukee last year where, it would be the Iverson action for Giannis and then a grenade DHO where he's fading deep into the corner. And the type of body control to be able to do that is insanity. But this is the type of stuff they can deploy him and Doug in, is this movement action where you're faced with a choice. Are you going to pay more attention to the pick and roll where a player is attacking the middle of the floor? Or are you going to be occupied by this double stagger where this movement shooter is suddenly going to get uncorked and, is going to cash this triple? So here, Greg Popovich, I think you can see it looks like 25 roll or I don't know, 25 wheel, maybe 25 loop, something like that. But the next time they are on the offensive end of the floor, it's this out Hawk action. And so, again, the value of it is Lonnie Walker hits this insane shot with Giannis contesting him at the rim. But if you look, Jakob has this whole side emptied out. And, an empty side pick and roll is lethal in its own right, but you have Doug as the second of the screeners. So it just feels like this is going to be one of their more potent sets this season. Oh, the Spurs. Nobody told me that they were getting fun with full court presses. Here, it doesn't lead to anything, but they deployed a 2-2-1 press. And if the Spurs are going to be super athletic and they have all these live bodies, why not throw out a couple of presses? That's going to be so much fun. And it might not get teams very often, but if you've got the bodies and the energy to just throw waves and waves of pressure, yeah, great ball handlers are going to pick it apart, but you'll have to expend just a little more energy than you would otherwise have to. And
the 3 guys who pushed up into the press, they got back in a shell once they got back in the half court. That was really impressive. They maintained the defensive spacing really, really well there.
Exactly. And it's this thing too, where, a Pop team is going to be disciplined, right? And that's the value of Pop is, that no matter what his team looks like, it's always, they're not really gonna, well, maybe this young team is going to beat themselves sometimes, but Pop is going to iron out a lot of these mistakes Pop is going to minimize the amount of mistakes that these young guys are going to make. But when you have guys like, Dejounte Murray and Devin Vassell, and even like a Keldon Johnson, who, if you can engage, who, Team USA, he saw what winning looked like at the highest level, blah, 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 is
our dear friend Les. White knuckling, right?
Yeah, and while we're at it, why not throw out a couple more Keldon Johnson moments? No, but it's this rip DHO or chin if you prefer, if you practice. So Derrick White gives the ball up to Yak and then gets this rip screen and then hands the ball off. And the value of this is that it gets Keldon going downhill against a shifted defense. And Drew is the low man in this situation. So he rises up, but Keldon with his immense body control is able to go up in traffic, finish with the left hand. And there were a couple of these moments where Keldon rose up very early in the game. I think it was his first shot attempt. He tried to throw it down on Giannis, which just a little too ballsy. It didn't work out for him. He got blocked at the rim. But every other time he went at Giannis, it was an up and under or finished on the other side of the rim or contorted his body. And that's the way you have to go against a great shot blocker. But similar to Ant, we talked about, Keldon is fearless. So, sometimes he's going to take it to the rack. And most times it won't work out. But every now and then he'll have something.
And added to his growing list of nicknames, yours for him, quote, an ambitious young man, end quote, seems as apt as anything. It fits very well next to big body and Mustang on his basketball reference page.
You got a nickname for Yuta Watanabe on there, and I really want one. I want somebody to be like, I heard Evin call him this. Let's see if it sticks.
An ambitious young man is probably more accessible than Dayman. Dayman's pretty niche.
But you got it on there.
Who's the Nightman to Yuta Watanabe's Dayman?
Oh man, this is come back to me on this. We'll workshop an answer next episode. Be on the lookout. We'll have something for you, because this requires a lot more thought than. Well, it's gonna consume me for hours. So
you just have to understand which NBA players are both sneaky and mean. The prerequisites for Nightman,
And so that's why, I don't want to just throw out a name, because they can either be sneaky or mean, but to be both is kind of special. And there's this one set that I thought was kind of clunky, even though I respect the set. I know what it's for. This Iverson screen the screener action where the timing was a little off. And I don't necessarily know if, maybe they threw the set in right before the game, whatever. But it didn't vibe with me, right? Because when the screener action happens, it turns into a dribble handoff for Lonnie Walker and is way above the break. And it's just, I don't know, it was just a little weird. So they got a good look out of it. They got a Lonnie Walker mid-range. And I think that is as good a place as any to transition into Dejounte Murray and Derrick White, who mid-range monsters in this one. The way they attacked drop coverage was super, super fun. Dejounte 5 made field goals in this one. I think the first one was something in transition, and it looked like it was going to be kind of a dud of a game because he had some early misses. But a lot of it was this catch, give and go right into an elbow pull-up jumper. And the same thing for Derrick White. He was largely able to exploit the space given him by the Milwaukee Bucks. And yeah, that's the shot the Bucks want to give up. But I think, oh man, I heard somebody I really admire say, like, before you can start taking shots, before you can start forcing the issue, you have to take what the defense is giving you. And, that will yield higher reps. I think they were talking about OG Anunoby. I can't quite remember how it went, but it was
sage
something
wisdom,
like
though. Sage wisdom. Really.
I agree. And so, that's what I think Dejounte Murray and Derrick White kind of did here, is that, what they can kind of do. Dejounte attacking the paint is going to be a work in progress, but the fact that he can hit these mid-range jumpers, and yeah, I know he was, I think, top 5, maybe top 3 in mid-range scoring last season. I think he was up there with Chris Paul, and I want to say Devin Booker was the other one, but I'm not sure. But Dejounte was up there. And so the fact that he is already willing to take these shots is a really good thing. And it bodes well, because how many teams are going to really be aggressive on the pick and rolls against the Spurs? Because if you have these athletes, these dynamic young wings who can get to the basket and just there's going to be violence at the rim, why would you give them that chance? Just stay home, stay in a drop, and, give them the shot that they want, but you'll be able to beat them if that's the shot they're hitting. So, yeah. Derrick White can do some stuff. Derrick White had this one beautiful, masterful sequence where it was a fast break. Drew Holiday tried to Euro step to get to his left hand, and Keldon Johnson was in front of him. Derrick White chased down, and then he was able to save the ball from going out of bounds. And then there was a scramble where Drew threw up a lob to Giannis, something all too familiar for Suns fans, I guess. Yeah, so he threw it up. Giannis wasn't able to power it down, so he had to come down with it. And Derrick White was underneath him, not like undercutting him, but, just forcing him a little further out than he would have liked to have caught it. And so Jakob comes in and he just spikes this thing off the backboard. And Dejounte grabs the ball, goes the other way. Derrick is able to just attack. I think it gets a kind of a brush screen and is able to turn the corner. And he goes up and shows it and finishes on the other side, and Giannis kind of rakes him in the face, swiping at the ball. But a circa shot, lefty and one, just an unreal sequence, and it just energized the building, I think. So Derrick White can do so many different things, and it's just a matter of what he's going to give you any given night.
Hell yeah, big Derrick White fan. The only thing I have to say about the Spurs this early in the season is that if Jakob Poeltl was playing basketball of more consequence in the NBA landscape, he would probably be a Defensive Player of the Year nominee.
And it's not just that. Yes, Jakob, I think, largely underrated. Underrated is a relative term, obviously, because, yeah. But Jakob, for the most part here, I don't want to overvalue what he did, because this is early in the season and the Bucks, do they care about this game? Maybe. But Jakob is a very capable playmaker in the short roll. You give him touches, he is making the right decisions, and that's kind of defensively what he did as well. He just makes the right decision. And sometimes it plays this cat and mouse game beautifully, where he stunts, but he never commits. That does enough to deter the ball handlers when they're attacking this drop coverage.
Women hate him. Never commits.
Yuck, I'm sorry. Whew. I also think he had I want to say 5-6 assists this game. If he was a fantasy player for you, he was rock solid. It was a solid stat line.
I forgot to do fantasy this year. I just forgot. Are you playing fantasy this year?
Yeah, I didn't want to. I forgot that the leagues, I'm in a couple of leagues that reset. I should see if I have Yak in any of them. They all just kind of.
You're asking the wrong person. Maybe you're the guy.
Maybe Bouncing Around should co-manage a fantasy team. See how we do against other podcasts.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
The only way for us to make money doing this is winning fantasy basketball leagues. Nobody cares about set recognition. Go and win fantasy.
True that. But yeah, so Derrick White, also the body control. I'm not going to say he reminds me of Drew Holiday offensively, but there are moments where when he hits that spin move and goes to finish with his offhand, that it's Drew Holiday-esque. Yeah. He's one of those guys that just, I don't know. He's so much fun. I don't necessarily know what you're going to get every single night from these young Spurs, but I think, as we said last year, they're going to be a league pass favorite. Yeah. So that's
one team. Literally, you have a team that could just throw a press in, that has one of the best defensive big men in the league. And, Devin Vassell, the first game he played with the Spurs this year, went off and looked the part of an incredible player. And so they have young up and coming wings. That was on my NBA wish list, by the way, was that Devin Vassell would be recognized as one of the up and coming wings. And Derrick White, Dejounte Murray, a slew of interesting other guys. Like, what is more fun than finding pockets of basketball that are new? Because there are a lot of known quantities that, you get together around Christmas and you gather around the TV and you watch all the known quantities of the NBA battle it out. And then you do the same thing in the playoffs. But the gems of the regular season are finding new interpretations of basketball. And every player, no matter how slim the margins, is a completely unique entity. And finding guys who operate in new ways is one of the true joys of watching basketball in the regular season, I think. And the Spurs seem to be chock full of them. Like, hell yeah, dude. That kicks ass.
I agree. And there's, I think like the homogenization of shot diets and things like that, that's inevitable because efficiency, and it's a more potent offense when you have as much spacing as possible. So even if you're not hitting these shots, the willingness to take them is a weapon in and of itself. But the Spurs look interesting. They're daring to attack. They are playing the way that the defense is gonna give you these shots. And so why not pick and choose your spots? If they're in the drop and you can hit your mid-range jumpers, take them and then try to exploit whatever advantages you can whenever you can. The mid-range jumpers against drop are going to keep you in games, and then you just have to find a way to win them. And maybe that's a press. Maybe that's this, 25 loop action where you run this hawk and then you can exploit all of these different things. So yeah, it's fun. I think that I lucked into this game because it's what it was for the longest time is Pop is the known quantity. You know what his team is going to look like, how they're going to play. And Mike Budenholzer and these Bucks are like, okay, well, you know how they're going to play in the regular season, but like, what are they going to look like in the playoffs? Things like that. You take that away now because, that the weight has been lifted off of these Milwaukee Bucks, and they can play whatever style they want to play because they know what they have come the postseason, and they can just like lean back on that stuff. The regular season has always been the opportunity to experiment. And so just a weird shift, right? Where Bud is now the known quantity and the Spurs are, oh, what are you going to get?
That's pretty good. If you were writing a piece, that would be the pretty good premise. It's the juxtaposing. It's pretty damn good. Do you have any other loose Spurs or Bucks ideas, or have we wrapped a pod?
I think we've hit a point where let's here's the thing, because we're gonna work on this pod and it'll come out when it comes out. But who are you excited to see? Who are you excited to watch a game for? Not necessarily what we're going to do for game of the week, because, a game of the week is always more interesting where if something pops off, then that's the game of the week. But who are you excited to see outside of the regulars, the classics,
I haven't seen the Cavs yet. And I think Mobley is somebody to watch this year. Evan Mobley. Also, the Blazers, but not because of Dame, but because I want to see how much Larry Nance Jr. in particular will grease the wheels of a lot of their actions and how he operates in that defense. And who else am I really looking forward to? The continued dominance of De'Aaron Fox, hopefully to a play-in spot or something close to that. And yet, the Grizzlies, as we talked about, what they look like this year, because they're leaning fully into Jaren and Ja. And the early returns of Ja so far have been OD, sir. They've been absolutely nuts. So all those things are probably, among many others, of course, are things I'm definitely looking forward to. Plus, there's a bunch of young guys I'm hoping to watch quite a lot of this year.
couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
Well, should we sign off and thank the people for listening?
I think we've reached a natural conclusion to this podcast.
Well, people, thank you for listening. If you want to, you could rate this on like Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. I don't know if Spotify or Google even have like a rating option. I don't know if they have that interface, but I know Apple Podcasts does, even though I don't use Apple Podcasts. So, but if you want to do that, you can. Maybe more importantly, on the medium you're currently watching it on, probably YouTube, you can like, subscribe, and tell your friends. And when they say, "What's this?" say, "Well, it's a Handsome Boy Modeling Podcast." A, B, it is, an incredible collection of basketball knowledge from Evan Gualberto, and occasionally Samson had an anecdote or two. That is the draw of Bouncing Around. And it's I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's an underappreciated podcast in the space currently, and the only way it will continue to grow is if you tell people who are also basketball purists and basketball fans who really love the game that this is something that's probably worthwhile for them. So thank you ahead of time for your advocation on our behalf. Thank you very much. And Evan, thank you for spending time with me on this Sunday afternoon. And thank you for all the work you're going to do in editing. And thank you to myself for the work I'll be doing in editing as well.
Right back at you.
Hey.
Is a high feel podcast. Shout out to Evan Zaucha.
Big shout out, Evan. High Feel Podcast. That's right. Podcast. Still chasing that tight 35.
My God.
Elusive as ever.